larger Exports Development Center that offers our local exporters multiple tools to help them identify their export, investment opportunities and explore international markets, says that our exports since 2014 have rose from $300 million to $1.8 billion.
Number of trade has been increased from $300 million to $1.8 million has been increased as export from Uganda to United Arab Emirates.
Through her remarks, the Vice President of Uganda said such engagements boost opportunities and increase trade investments. She also commended the United Arab Emirates for being the leading exporters of labor from Uganda despite the various controversies surrounding it.
And what we can export to the United Arab Emirates, we also want to work very well with the United Arab Emirates to see that we can export. And I would like particularly to thank the United Arab Emirates for the migrant workers from Uganda to the United Arab Emirates, which are in thousands now. And I would like to congratulate the United Arab Emirates, the East African community and Uganda for this business mission which is taking place for the first time. And also pledge that as government we support it and continue to support it annually.
Having a one-stop center for those who come to trade and those who go out to trade in order to get information on how to deal with the outside world is our next implementation, says the Ministry of Trade.
The one-stop center, at the moment in industry, Uganda has got Uganda Investment Authority, which is the one-stop center for people who come here for industry. But the policy we are trying to drive to is to have a one-stop center for people who come to trade here and the people who come who go to trade outside to get information about what we can do outside the world.
Uganda National Chamber of Commerce says the biggest catastrophe we face is traders tend to get comfortable once they have attained the market, which narrows the gap of market despite the level of negotiations reached at.
What affects our exportation as the private sector in Uganda is the quality and the quantity of the products that we take out. Every country has a particular standard that we must comply with, and if we do not comply with it, we'll get very comfortable with the local markets that we have. So most of the times that we have had orders and the private sector has been heavily affected, it's because either we do not meet the quantity or we are not meeting the quality that is required.
But this is what is being done.
Arab Emirates that is here today, these are investors that will invest their money to increase our quality and our quantity in terms of investment, in terms of the technology that is going to be used, because with a good technology you also increase the production that is given. But also to make sure that we train our different sectors that we have, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is oil and gas, whether it is agriculture, they need to be trained on the quality that is required, not at the time of exportation, but at the time of the initial start. What are you doing? Because if you tell me that, these standards have to be met at the time of exportation, it's going to be difficult for me to adjust my agricultural produce that is already out. But if I'm trained at the initial stage, I know that at every stage I have to make sure that I am required to provide the quality that is needed. So it doesn't take a day, of course, but at least we have seen a lot of progress. We've seen the paper that had been rejected initially, now it has been approved. So I think with the other agricultural produce and also the manufacturing industry, it is a step that we're taking.
This forum is timely as we compare our trade competitive journey with the United Arab Emirates and the Middle East. Uganda is pushing for different regional integration and development.
And the competitors. SMEs should constantly look for ways to set their businesses apart and move forward. A strategy to get ahead of the competition and protect the business from planned and uncertainties.
Insurance builds your credibility, yeah? It shows your customers and the people that you're working with, that you're managing your risks properly, and people want to associate with such people. I don't think you can go to, say, like MTN, Shell, all those big time companies, yeah, and get business with them. Yes, you can get business with them, but they want to deal with people who, for instance, you pay your taxes. Now in IRA, we have a lot of people we give contracts, But of course, if you're not paying URA or you're not paying your taxes, no business for you. Same as insurance.
There is need to consider getting all the businesses insecured, for it helps in survival and competitiveness of the business. More to that, it is an upcoming mechanism to be put in place to de-risk the environment in which these SMEs operate.
This is good for SMEs to curb risks, and then for also resilience for the SMEs to be sustainable, to be here, not only here today, but tomorrow also.
Furthermore, insurance guarantees business continuity for the SMEs, especially when a business suffers due to an unfortunate event. This affects its customers, stakeholders, shareholders, and the public too. Therefore, insurance helps to manage bad occurrences to protect the business and every customer attached to the business.
It provides business continuity for the service. It kind of guarantees business continuity for the business, because there is no one that comes in to do a business and wants to end it abruptly. We tolerate it when COVID comes and hit us, and we were all unaware of what was coming, what the effect could be, and we all suffered. But I guess we now know better, and even in the face of such hardships like COVID, we have set strategies for business continuity.
An SME is seen to face losses in case they do not invest in insurance because of the long-term benefits in it. They are advised to greatly invest in it for the future protection of the business.
Put in a lot of money in the investments, but while we invest in these businesses of ours, there are risks out there, and risks are a day-to-day thing. So you not being insured means that you risk losing everything that you put in a business in case you face any accident or any kind of a risk that might endanger your business. But if you have an insurance, then that means you have another shoulder to lean on in case these insurances come into our businesses.
SMEs have slowly participated in insurance. However, Uganda's Small Scale Industries Association is working together with other insurance companies to make sure they insure their businesses. Uganda has been working hard to develop into a middle-income country. The goal of Agenda 2040 is to hasten socio-economic change. However, certain development initiatives and investment strategies have been linked to violations of human rights, which makes it difficult to strike a balance between human rights and development. Due to this, government is set to introduce a comprehensive land acquisition bill. This has been revealed by the State Minister for Lands, Persis Namuganza, while opening the second National Land Forum 2022. As far as land is concerned in Uganda, she further revealed that Cabinet earlier this week approved the National Physical Development Plan policy to resolve land issues.
So we, as evaluate our achievements and challenges, how best can government provide Ugandans with access to productive resources? With regard to land tenure constraints, can we establish partnerships with landowners and ensure the land is readily available for development? The other issue we are working on is land acquisition.
Landowners still face a challenge of acquiring land titles, yet others are still ignorant about the process. However, land titles are very important for socio-economic transformation as they offer more land tenure security, ownership and investment opportunities, and this is a route for creation of employment opportunities.
For the land use and land management issues, including compliance with physical planning, and yet government has just approved the National Physical Development Plan last week, this very week actually, in Cabinet on Monday. There have also been issues of landowners who have failed to comply with the land use and end up losing their land. We need to evaluate the effect of land use compliance on the landowners.
According to 2021 Corruption Index, Uganda was rated 144 with a score of 27. It's estimated that the country loses $500 million annually to corruption. Government has established systems and structures to curb corruption, such as enactment of anti-corruption acts. However, despite all this, the country is still plagued with rampant corruption across sectors, especially with the land sector.
Of titles, it's because of the middlemen. It's basically the middlemen that perpetuate. And because we don't know the process, trust me, even yourself, if you want to register your land, you might not know where to start from. And for you to be able to be served first, you might think of already, getting someone who is already connected.
The issue of titling land is key and very important in our quest for socio-economic transformation, as it offers more land tenure security, ownership, and certainly for investment opportunities, which in the long run creates potential employment opportunities.
But how does land contribute to the country's GDP?
One of the critical issues that is coming up, especially in today's deliberation, is the issue of corruption. And as Transparency International Uganda, we are basically in the land sector to address the aspects of corruption, because corruption affects everyone, including myself. And our studies already show that 1 out of 5 Ugandans, all Africans, have experienced corruption. And this happens at the time when they are seeking services within the land sector. So that shows that corruption is huge.
% of Uganda's land is arable, but only 35% is cultivated. In the financial year 2021-2022, agriculture accounted for about 24.1% of the country's GDP and 33% of export earnings, and this indicates that if all land issues are resolved, there will be growth in the sector.
$500 million lost as a result of corruption, and of course in Uganda, and we're looking at an annual basis due to corruption related matters. And that was a report regarding land and corruption, as we see the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, that's together with the Landnet Uganda, have held their first ever national land conference dubbed the Land Forum. That's to celebrate the achievements of the land sector and draw lessons for improvement. And of course, the forum was held under the theme Land Act at 20, making land work for Uganda, thus bridging gaps between the public and the land sectors, of course, definitely. So you can see that's what's really transpiring right there, trying to solve a few issues related with the sector, or what we can call the industry in disguise. All right, a very good morning, and of course, this is SMB, the news breaker, as we are taking through the day's previous news stories. Just in case you missed out, this is the right time for you, of course, to check in and get to understand the business information, to understand what's happening around the world in the world of business. And of course, just a review, we reviewed something regarding the United Arab Emirates Investment Forum. As we see, Uganda was to gain, that's a lot, had a lot to gain from the United Arab Emirates, with over 1.4 billion pounds, and of course in export profits, advanced technology and highly established agro-processing sector. Uganda's been doing quite lots of exchange programs and regarding matters of exposure, creating international relations, and this is really exposing its potential out there, and not only on the African continent but also the world at large. And this creates a certain competitive advantage for the country, not only of course in the entire world, but also a big advantage looking at the African continent and the possible benefits of that regard. And of course, looking at Uganda's Vice President, that's His Excellency Jessica Alupo, officiated a meeting of the private sector on how to set benchmarks for investment in important areas and achieve and sustain the global market. So benchmarking, one of the key aspects that we're seeing, and of course something that is really being urged, being emphasized to ensure that we can achieve that desirable economic growth and development. That is something very, very remarkable. And also, we reviewed a report regarding insurance in small and intermediary enterprises, and this time around, looking at their rate at which they are involved with insurance. Are they even participating into the insurance sector? And of course, the creation of an estimated 2.5 million jobs and an increase in living standards and social and political stability are all attributed that to the small and intermediate, medium-sized enterprises. And of course, they offer about 2.5 millions here, as we see, and they are also helping to increase in the living standards of the people, of the citizens in Uganda. Now, we see that they also account for 90% of the private sector and contribute 75% of the country's gross domestic product. And of course, this time around, we see the Insurance Regulatory Authority conducted a survey to gather data on the country's selected SMEs' adoption of insurance, getting to understand what rate have these SMEs adopted insurance, since they really hold a great pillar to this country's economy, contributing the biggest percentage of the private sector. And yet we know what the private sector, the role of the private sector, not only in Uganda but in any given nation, the role of the private sector when it comes to growth and development of that country. All right, now away from that, let's say to poverty that's in the ghetto youths, as the inability of the poor people to obtain employable academic credentials or any other skills that would allow them to launch their own businesses has continued to feed the vicious cycles of poverty that's in impoverished communities in Uganda. As a result, many young people are unable to make a living and must turn to desperate measures that's to survive. That's through practical training, a sustainable positive alternative that's to the ghetto residents' subsistence is being offered out in an effort to raise awareness of their conditions. Let's have the details of this report.
Talk about ghettos. Ghetto means a community that is imploded with persistent poverty, diseases, poor systems, and poor quality of life. So we don't expect someone to come from the ghetto and say, I'm very rich, I can live to the fullest, because these are incubation hubs for starters, for isolated and ignored populations. That's why whoever can't find comfortable living in Kororo dives into Katwe, Kamocha, Katanga, Kinawataka, Kiwunya. It is a big rap if I start mentioning them.
Many less fortunate children in Uganda want and need to go to school, but as they get older, these children become teenagers who unwillingly suffer the effects of illiteracy. In addition to the regular traditional education that prepares one to look for jobs that do not exist, many CSOs such as the National Youth Advocacy Platform have emerged to raise voices and support skilling centers to empower these young people by training them in various business-generating ventures like hairdressing, fashion and design, among others.
One of the biggest things that the youth are grappling with is unemployment and underemployment. So with the skilling of this center today, our youth are going to go out there as job creators rather than job makers. We also understand in today's statistics, over 400,000 youth are churned out every year from different institutions to go and look for jobs. And there are only 9,000 jobs that are available for the youth. It gives us over 30% of the youth looking for jobs.
These skilling centers rely on well-wishers to provide finances and scholastic resources that allow the youth to learn practically hands-on skills, because charging them lump sum fees will only chase these already underprivileged youths away. As Sadat says, the majority of donors have not embraced assisting institutions in the underprivileged areas.
However, one challenge with the proposal is they can't validate and qualify you to get that grant for any project. When you say in the end your head offices are located in Katwe, the stigma is still there. They believe those people can't manage, are incapacitated. Yet there is a great work, and you've seen young people here testifying
The young people who have benefited from the 6-month skilling program are confident about raising their living standards and succeeding in their upcoming business ventures, but there are still gender stereotypes in the technical skills sector because many young men think that these are industries dominated by women.
Maybe when I was consulting my fellow youth, the boys, because by that time I was building, so I decided to leave building and go in fashion because it was my dream. So when I was asking them, consulting them, they said that job is for women. Even up to now, some people tell me that the job is for women, like those hand skills are for girls who dropped out of school.
When I move out there, I have an open mind, even to my friends, that they don't need to sit down and look for employments in the offices. You can use your own brain.
In honor of the World Day for Tolerance, which aims to recognize that people are inherently different and possess a wide range of cultures and ways of expressing themselves, Mr. Zua urges governments and individuals to support the cottage industry in order to further the larger economic goals that Uganda wants to accomplish by the year 2040. The quickest method to raise per capita incomes and accelerate the country's economic development is to enable the youth create jobs in light of the rising unemployment gap in this demographic transition that Uganda and many African nations are going through.
Fighting poverty in the ghettos right there, and of course when the youths are being skilled, since they contribute quite a big percentage to this country's economy, and of course links to the population, and of course at the same time that's the economy cost that now they're paying the taxes, so you find that there is need to create the employment, the viable employment opportunities on their behalf, and also to avoid some other circumstances and inconveniences, for example high crime rate, because the biggest percentage of them, when they get unemployed due to lack of adequate skills, they will end up, and of course, on the streets, robbing people, committing crime, and of course, where crime dominates a place, it will affect other activities that are moving on. All right, now we come to the end of the news recap this morning as we look at the export sector setbacks and resolutions at the same time. Uganda has a negative trade balance. It imports more than it exports, and of course, we are living in extremely difficult circumstances on a global, regional, and domestic level. Growth in the global economy has slowed as a result of the regional markets experiencing economic difficulties, and export growth has been quite minimal. By understanding the fundamentals of production quality, we can start enhancing domestic manufacturing procedures to expand the export industry. Let's have the details.
About 80% of Uganda's overall exports are made up primarily of agricultural goods. These include, among others, fish, maize, tobacco, tea, hides and skins, coffee, which dominates the export market, and cocoa beans. The export sector is hampered by operations bottlenecks, which are work stages that cannot satisfy the production quota even at their maximum throughput capacity due to the delays or stops in the flow of operations.
Some of the bottlenecks that have been faced by this industry are two-way. For both agricultural and processed is the quality. Many Ugandans either do not know or choose to ignore the standards that have been issued to enable you have the right quality for the goods that are required out there. So there is information that's readily available, but some people either choose not to adhere and others do not know, or others do not follow the process of production. Yes, so majorly quality, 2, the quantity, 3, the consistency.
To produce the highest quality exports and draw on the global market, it is essential to be able to gauge the quality of your products during the manufacturing process. Uganda must significantly raise its standards in order to compete on the national and regional markets.
So today, Uganda loses revenue from exports of about $100 million per year because of interceptions. What are interceptions? This is where Ugandans do export, but in the destination market, they find our exports are not compliant with the standards of the destination market.
So they burn, actually, these exports. They destroy them. So we are working with the private sector and government, particularly the Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Trade.
If a corporation discovers that its production capacity is insufficient to satisfy its production goals and the standards of the global market, a bottleneck affects the level of production capacity that it can accomplish.
From production to transportation costs, then the procedures involved up to the time of shipping. There were problems of standards of the exports that you want to export, and even the sensitization of the farmers who produce the things you want to export. All that needs to be done in order to be able to have exports and which are competitive on the world market.
The export of manufactured goods with added value, such as base metal products, cement, edible fats and oils, sugar, plastics, soap, personal care items and cosmetics, is also progressing for the nation. She further talks about how to address some problems haunting the business.
We work with other organizations. We work with MAIF, Ministry of Agriculture. We work with UNBS for items that are actually processed or manufactured to regulate the standards of the produce. Then with agriculture, we work with Ministry of Agriculture to ensure that your soil, things that are in your soil are actually good for you to grow for export. Do you have a pack house? They inspect to check. So agriculture is there to train the farmers to actually produce specifically for export.
The government and the private sector should liaise about the best measures to take to grow the country's export base, such as improving infrastructure and supporting farmers and exporters as well to produce good quality of goods and commodities to meet the better standards of the international market for development in our country.
It's exactly 34 minutes past the hour of 7 a.m. and at this particular time, let's get into a short commercial break. And of course, we shall be returning with more business insights. Good morning.
SMART24